Picture this. You're 62, sitting at your kitchen table on a Saturday morning with your coffee, scrolling through your 401k balance, and you think, I could do it. I could put in my notice on Monday. The number looks close enough. You're tired. Your knee's been bothering you. Your best friend just retired last month, and she's already posting photos from Sedona. So you do it. You file for Social Security that same week. And for the first few months, it feels like a dream. But 18 months later, you're staring at a statement that says you're locked into $1,400 a month for life when you could have had 2,500. And that gap, it's not going away. It's compounding in the wrong direction for the next 25 years. This isn't a hypothetical. Nearly half of all retirees didn't retire when they planned to, and most of them ended up with less money, more stress, and a decision they can't undo. The difference between retiring at the right time versus the wrong time can be six figures over your lifetime. And the window where you make that call, it's a lot smaller than you think. So let's walk through what the research actually says about retirement timing and, more importantly, what it means for you specifically right now. Let's start with something most people don't realize. Only 54% of retirees actually retired when they wanted to. Let that land for a second. That means nearly half of all Americans had their retirement timeline hijacked. They either had to leave earlier than expected or push it later than they'd hoped. And both of those situations come with real consequences. Here's the part that surprised me. 46% of retirees ended up retiring earlier than planned, and most of them didn't do it by choice. About a third were pushed out because of a health crisis, their own or a spouse's. And it's one thing to have retirement on the calendar for 65 and then an illness shows up at 58 or 60 and suddenly your hand is forced. Another third were let go, company restructuring, layoffs, and let's be honest with each other. Re-entering the workforce at 60 is a different game entirely. Age discrimination is real, even though it's illegal. And then the final third stepped away to become a caregiver, an aging parent, grandchildren who needed them. Life showed up, and caregiving took priority over everything else. Now, this lands especially hard on women. We are more likely to be the caregiver. We are more likely to leave the workforce for someone else's needs. That's not a judgment, it's a pattern. And it means we need a different kind of preparation than what most generic retirement advice is going to give us. If we look at the early retirees who stepped away because they actually had enough money saved, that's only 21% of those who retired earlier than expected. So the vast majority weren't walking away with confidence. They were walking away because they had no other option. And having to retire on someone else's timeline, whether it's your employers or your buddies or your families, can create an enormous amount of financial stress and uncertainty. Let me tell you about Diane. Diane was 61 and she had a plan. Retire at 65, collect her full Social Security, lean on the pension from her school district, the whole thing mapped out on a spreadsheet she updated every January. Then her mother had a stroke. Diane went part-time to help with care, then part-time became no time. By 62, she realized she wasn't going back. So she filed for Social Security because she needed income coming in. What Diane didn't fully understand at the time was that that single decision, claiming at 62 instead of waiting, was going to cost her roughly $300,000 in lifetime benefits. Not because she's bad with money, not because she didn't try, because she didn't have options. And that's the thing we need to talk about. Here's where it gets into the territory that nobody explains clearly enough. When you claim Social Security is one of the most consequential financial decisions you will ever make, and it's permanent. If you claim at 62, your benefit is reduced by up to 30%. That reduction doesn't go away. It doesn't adjust later. It's locked in for the rest of your life. If you wait until your full retirement age, which for most of us is 66 or 67, you get the full benefit you've earned. And if you wait until 70, your benefit increases by 8% for every year you delay past full retirement age. 8% a year, guaranteed. You're not going to find that return anywhere else with zero risk. Let me put real numbers on this. Someone who claims Social Security at 62 might receive around $1,400 a month. If that same person had waited until 70, they could be looking at $2,500 a month or more. That's an $1,100 difference every single month. Over 20 years of retirement, that adds up to more than $260,000. And if you live into your late 80s or your 90s, which more and more women are doing, that gap gets even wider. 23% of people who claimed at 62 say they regret it. And a survey from the Senior Citizens League found that many of them didn't fully understand that claiming early locks in a permanently reduced benefit until it was already too late. That word, permanently, doesn't register the way it should when you're exhausted and ready to be done. And here's the cruel part. If you're forced into an early retirement and you don't have enough in savings to bridge the gap, you may feel like you have no choice but to claim early. You need income. The bills don't stop. So you take what's available even though you know it's not the best long-term move. That's not a failure of character, that's a failure of planning runway. And it's exactly why building that runway matters so much. Even if you think you'll work until 65, life doesn't always cooperate. So Diane didn't make a bad decision because she's irresponsible. She made it because when the moment came, she didn't have another option. And that's the thing we need to build. Not a perfect plan, options. Now, let me address what you're probably thinking. Fine. So, retiring too early is risky. So, I'll just work longer, I'll be safe. But here's the thing, retiring too late has its own cost, and it's one that people consistently underestimate. About 11% of retirees end up working longer than they planned. And a survey by New York Life found that nearly half of people who delayed retirement wish they'd retired about 4 years earlier than they did. 4 years. That's not a minor miscalculation. That's a significant chunk of your healthiest, most active years. The regret is almost always the same. They realized too late that they traded their best years for more time at a desk. And once they finally did step away, the thought that kept coming back was, I should have done this sooner. They underestimated how much joy they'd get from their hobbies, from traveling, from spending real unscheduled time with the people they love. Things that don't just require money, they require energy and physical ability. Let me tell you about Gloria. Gloria worked until 71. She was a project manager, very good at her job, and if she's being honest, a little afraid of what retirement would feel like. What would I even do with myself? That question kept her at her desk for 5 extra years. When she finally stepped away, she started volunteering at a wildlife rehabilitation center. She took her granddaughter to Italy. She told her sister over the phone, I'm furious I didn't do this at 66. Gloria was healthy at 71, but her knee replacement was already on the calendar. She got 4 good years of full mobility in retirement. She could have had 8 or 9. And that's the tension at the center of all of this. Retire too early without being financially ready, and you spend decades stressed about money. Retire too late, and you spend your best years in a building you didn't need to be in. The question isn't just when can you afford to retire. It's when does your financial readiness and your physical ability to enjoy your life actually overlap? Because that window is not as wide as you think. So what does the research say about that overlap? The data points to 65 to 67 as the sweet spot for most Americans. And it's not because that number is magic. It's because that's where several important things converge at once. Medicare eligibility kicks in at 65. And if you've ever priced private health insurance in your early 60s, you know this matters enormously. Healthcare coverage is one of the biggest reasons people stay in jobs they'd otherwise leave. And at 65, that obstacle goes away. Full Social Security retirement age lands at 66 or 67 for most people watching this. That means at that point you can claim your full benefit. No penalty, no permanent reduction. And if you've been saving consistently throughout your career, your investments have likely had 30 or 40 years of compound growth behind them. They're at or near their peak. You're drawing from a full reservoir, not a half-filled one. There's also something less tangible, but just as important. Research shows that happiness in retirement actually increases with age, especially after 65. A survey found that retirees over 70 reported higher life satisfaction than those who retired in their 50s and 60s. 89% of retirees say they're generally happy. 77% say they have enough money to live comfortably, but, and this is a significant but, that comfort level drops sharply for retirees who are carrying consumer debt into retirement, for those relying solely on Social Security without any other income source, and for those who were forced out of the workforce before they were financially ready. 1 in 3 retirees has had trouble making ends meet at some point during their retirement. 1 in 3. That's not a small number. So 65 to 67 isn't the answer because a spreadsheet says so. It's the answer because that's where financial readiness and physical ability to enjoy your life tend to overlap for most people. And understanding that overlap is more important than picking a number and hoping it works out. Now here's what I want you to actually do with this information. because knowing the data is useless if it doesn't change your behavior. If you're between 55 and 60 and still working, you are in the power zone right now. This is the stretch where every dollar you save and every year you delay claiming Social Security has the most leverage. Max out your retirement contributions, your 401k, your IRA, whatever accounts are available to you. Catch up contributions exist for exactly this stage of life. Use them. Run your Social Security numbers at 62, at 67, and at 70, and see the difference in black and white. It will change how you think about timing. And start eliminating high interest debt now. Credit cards, especially. You do not want to carry that weight into retirement. It is one of the fastest ways to erode your comfort. If you're between 60 and 65 and you're feeling the pull, you're tired, you're ready, that kitchen table moment is calling to you, here's what I'd suggest before you make any permanent decisions. Test drive your retirement budget. Take your projected retirement income and actually live on it for 2 or 3 months while you still have your paycheck as a safety net. See how it feels in practice, not just on paper. You'll learn more in those 90 days than in a year of planning. And please, do not claim Social Security just because you're eligible. If you have savings or other income that can bridge you from 62 to 66 or 67 or even 70, that bridge could be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars over your lifetime. That is not an exaggeration. If you've already retired and you're feeling worried, I want you to know you're not stuck. There are things you can optimize. Look at your spending with fresh eyes. Consider whether part time work, even something small, could take pressure off your portfolio. Make sure you're accessing every benefit and resource available to you. There is no shame in adjusting. There is only cost in pretending everything is fine when it isn't. And for everyone, regardless of where you are, plan your time, not just your money. The retirees who are happiest are not the wealthiest ones. They're the ones who have purpose, social connection, something to wake up for on a Tuesday morning that has nothing to do with a paycheck. Think about what that looks like for you before your last day at work, not after. Remember that woman at the kitchen table, the one who was so ready to be done that she filed for Social Security before she'd really thought it through? She's not a cautionary tale because she made a terrible decision. She's a cautionary tale because she didn't have options. That's what all of this is really about. Not picking the perfect age, not gaming the system, building enough flexibility that when your moment comes, whether it's at 62 or 67 or somewhere in between, you get to choose it. Not your boss, not a health scare, not a number on a government form, you. And that kind of freedom, that's worth every bit of planning it takes to get there.